Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. So today I wanted to talk about DC Comics. Apparently Superman will be in the public domain in 9 years. I'm not entirely sure why they're talking about this now, considering the fact that we have almost a decade to go, but I feel like companies kind of fear the public domain, so I guess DC is trying to get ahead of it. Really quick though, before I get into the article, I wanted to talk about my comic again, and we're hoping to launch pre-orders soon. It's about a man who lives in a post-apocalyptic future, who travels back in time to save the world from being overrun by monsters. We're really excited for this project, and we're hoping that you all love it as much as we do. But it's called Shadow Paradox, and it should be available soon. So thanks for hearing me out, and let's get into the article. So there's this article here by Popverse that says Superman falls into the public domain in less than 9 years, but DC Comics believes it's already found a solution to that problem. I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say that the public domain is a problem, but you know, people can be, in my opinion, exploitative with the public domain. Like, for example, those Winnie the Pooh or Popeye movies that came out as soon as they hit the public domain, where those classic and beloved characters were cast as like these evil monsters. I think it'd be pretty cool to have like Popeye fighting evil monsters, but that's just my opinion. But right now we're talking about Superman, where the president of DC Comics made a statement saying owning Superman isn't the same as understanding Superman. So let's get into the article and see what they had to say. In 2035, DC Comics will celebrate 100 years of storytelling, but 1 year earlier, Superman will enter the public domain in the United States, as per current copyright law, as DC president, publisher, and chief creative officer Jim Lee revealed during an appearance at New York Comic Con 2025. The company isn't too worried about the latter event, even knowing it's less than a decade away, so I guess to them, a decade is not a long time. I don't know, I still think that the public domain is mostly really cool, but I digress. Let's continue. For those who weren't aware, Superman as a character falls into public domain on January 1st, 2034, but it's only the version of the character as published in Action Comics #1 back in 1938. Current US copyright law drops work into the public domain 95 years after the initial publication. The 95 years was mostly because of Disney. They kept pushing and pushing to make the public domain longer and longer, which I think is really ironic coming from Disney, considering the fact that most of their catalog is based off of public domain works, like, you know, Cinderella, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, and so on. Those are all stories that are in the public domain, but they've worked so hard to stave off the public domain when it comes to their own properties. But basically the way the public domain works is that once a property hits that 95-year mark, it'll be fair use, but only in its original incarnation, which is what they explain here. But like, for example, Mickey Mouse, the one that's in the public domain is his original black and white version, but if you wanted to draw like red shorts on Mickey Mouse, that's still copyrighted material, even though it is the same character, and they expand on that here, meaning that both Superman and Clark Kent, not to mention Lois Lane, will enter the public domain in less than 9 years, but the Daily Planet, Jimmy Olsen, Lex Luthor, or even Superman That Flies will still be copyrighted. They all first appeared in 1940, with the exception of Superman's flight, which showed up a year later. Yeah, the original version of Superman did not fly, he instead leaped tall buildings in a single bound, and then they added the flight later. I didn't realize it was that much later, but yeah. It goes on to say, nevertheless, a Superman will be public domain in 2034, but speaking during an appearance at NYCC's 2025's Retailers Day on October 8th, Lee didn't seem overly concerned about it happening. Speaking about problems facing DC Comics in the future, Lee said, yes, characters will fall into the public domain. It's already happening. We've seen all those unsettling knockoffs of Mickey Mouse floating around online. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, all the horror movies and stuff. But here's the truth. The character isn't the magic, the storytelling is, the world building is. Owning Superman isn't the same as understanding Superman, knowing how he moves, how he speaks, what he stands for. He went on to say, anyone can draw a cape, anyone can write a hero. That's been around as long as comics have been, and it's called fan fiction. There's nothing wrong with fan fiction. It shows how deeply these characters live inside all of us. But Superman only feels right when he's in the DC universe, our mythos. That's what endures. That will carry us into the next century. I can kind of see what he's saying in a way, but I also think he's being a little narrow-minded about it. There are a lot of people who just see superheroes and Superman as like solving all their problems with punching. Like with Batman, for example, people argue that he just beats up poor people and the mentally ill, and he doesn't do any good for the city at large. Not really. And Superman is all about just beating up the bad guys and nothing else, but ultimately ignoring who Clark is as a person, or how much he deeply cares about people, and saying that he just punches his problems away is a really gross misunderstanding of the character. But at the same time, there are even people at DC Comics who have that same attitude, like Mark Russell, for example. The article finishes off by saying, after all, when Superman becomes public domain, it doesn't mean that DC has to stop using the character. They're probably going to start using him more, to be honest. Like, for example, with Disney movies, they now open with Mickey from Steamboat Willie, his original black and white version. And the reason they did that is because he became public domain, and they still want you to associate that character and that version with the character with the Disney company. So DC will likely also double down once he becomes public domain. But it continues by saying, and even if other creators want to bring a Superman into their own stories, only DC will have the ability to use all of Superman as he exists in fans' imaginations and memories, well, for however many years. So that's where the article ends. I mean, I'm always up for more Superman, and I'm not looking forward to the inevitable horror movie where he's evil and killing everyone, even though we've already had that quite a bit, actually. You know, Brightburn, and there are also a lot of properties that have like an evil version of Superman, like Invincible or The Boys and so on. Except this time they're actually going to be able to call him Superman. But anyway, that's my take on this whole thing. What do you guys think? Do you think DC has the right attitude? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. So with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our members: Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Spam, J Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XV Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Takari the Professor, Omni Fair, J Cavalry, Strider Exile, Phil C, Killer Bomb, Slawa Saporiguez, Entwine Boot 301, Frankie Camarillo, Crimson Phantom, Jin the Goblin, Daunter, G-Rock, Lucas Geist, Papa Hud 69, The Gengar King, and Snoopy Von Snoops. Thank you all so much for the support, and if you would like to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. And if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.